Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Glavin. A second by Mr. Barrett. Any discussion? All in favor? That's a 4-0 vote. Brings us to the presentation agenda. Mr. Mayor. Mayor's report. Outstanding. That brings us to the council report. Ms. Newman, any report? Okay, I have no report. Mr. Barrett, none. Mr. Glavin, none. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the public agenda. We'll set aside 3 minutes for each citizen if they have a comment. If you do have a comment, please say your name clearly and sign in if we have a sign-in sheet. But speak your name clearly so the clerk can get it down. Our clerk today is Tanner Cook. There you go. All right, anybody on my left, your right, wish to comment? Mr. Carney. Come on through there. Somebody will have to give you a mic, perhaps. Hey, Rob. Hey, George.
What do I sign? Okay.
We're not officially yet, but.
All right. Okay, real quick. Okay. Good morning, good evening, you guys. My name is Leo Carney. I'm a resident of Ward 2, Keller Avenue in Biloxi. Really just wanted to address the council today regarding the budget for the fiscal year. And part of the focus is the CARES Act funding is my concern. What the American Rescue Plan Act funding for this legislative session. The last time I spoke to the council, I think I brought up a youth employment program or some type of an initiative to kind of engage our youth and get them acclimated to employers here on the coast. I've just started a 501c4. It's a nonprofit, and it's called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, and we focus specifically on issues that affect our Black community, not just our Black community, but our community as a whole. But we do put an emphasis on the issues that are specifically affecting this community. And so what I did was I researched the Rescue Plan Act, and I saw where there's funding for a Workforce Investment Act through the American Rescue Plan, and it's a formula, but it's funded by grants. But this formula will help to mitigate, in my opinion, help to mitigate the gun violence in our communities and help to provide a vehicle for permanent employment for young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 years old. And so I see on the website, it's OSA Mississippi.gov, where certain allocations of money have come to Harrison County, Biloxi Public Schools, the city of Biloxi, and there are certain programs that nonprofits like myself can start, but I wanted to kind of partner with the city and with some of you guys in helping me to be able to achieve those goals. So that's all I have for today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carney. Anybody else on my left, your right? Yes, sir.
So James Pennington, I think most of you probably know Back Bay Mission. I'm the new executive director, been there a few months. I am a son of Mississippi, and we're here to advocate on behalf of Back Bay Mission. We really want to continue to partner with you, partner with Biloxi, partner with the council, especially around rehabs, kind of improving our neighborhoods. We've had a long history of that, and so we were hoping that our funding could be, we had lost some funding, I think, over the last few years, could be restored to the $50,000. And actually, I'm going to have Craig, who's our construction manager, kind of talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done in collaboration with Biloxi.
So over the years, we've been doing work within the city of Biloxi limits, rehabbing houses and taking houses apart and everything. We're very active after Katrina, obviously, but we have got a lot of people still calling us for help. And with the amount of money that we have, distributing the money and trying to come up with construction budgets nowadays is pretty hectic. So we're trying to do and spread the wealth out as much as we can and help as many as we can. And so we just need those little bits of extra money to kind of spread the wealth a little bit. There's tons of people calling us, as I said, and we've got a lot of people through Hurricane Zeta still needing help. But we really, really do need this funding to help these homes be more sustainable.
So any questions? Comments, reflections?
Council President, and I should point out that the funding for the Back Bay Missions programs, it can be found in the past, has been found in the community development budget, which is up for discussion next workshop. There has been some discussion that maybe it should be moved to the non-department budget. It's worth thinking about. But right now, you'd find it in the community development budget.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Thank you, Mr. Pennington.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else on my left, your right? Anybody on my right, your left? Anybody in the back? All right, that concludes citizens' comments. This brings us to the policy agenda. The subject matter of today's meeting is to discuss the fiscal year 22 budget. I know that we're looking at specific departments today, and Mr. Mayor, you can start with, I think we said we're hoping to get through all of these: police, fire, administration, executive, legislative. I don't know if we'll get to community development today or not, or how many of those we'll get through, but we can start on either of those that you like, Mr. Mayor. It's all yours.
Let me say it, I think everyone should have a little summary sheet, and it's, across the line by department. But I've highlighted a couple of things that I want to, first of all, congratulate and thank Jody and Diane and all the department heads for crunching these numbers on where we're going to be as far as revenues against expenses. I've highlighted some things that I want to make a little note that the second piece of paper is the revenues we discussed in a prior workshop. And, if we just look at the bottom line, like I said, it works out pretty well. I thought that as discussed, as this proposal is for expenditures, that it's within $1 million of being revenues equal expenses. So I think y'all did a pretty good job in grinding down where we need to be. And I don't know whether it's by design or just turned out that way. One thing to note in this piece of paper, that in the expenditure workshop list, towards the employee count, the budgeted positions have increased 32 positions. And that the breakdown at that level, you can see a significant amount of change to the police department and public works and parks and recreation. We talked about beautification, and those 14 or 15 positions are new folks that are going to be able to do the things that we did. And so that resulting increase in not only the wages, if you see the highlighted part, that increase in those personnel, and as compared to last year's budget, is $1.7 million. The rest at the other end of the page is the increase in the capital equipment. That's everything from fire trucks to lawnmowers is about 2.4. Let me put my glasses on. 2.4, almost 2.5 million. And looking at the above, in the very consolidated thing, with regarding the non-departmental, there's an increase in $642,000. So bottom line, you're increasing the budget, the expenditure budget, by $5.2 million. But if you compare the total general fund for FY 2022 is $68.69 million. As compared to the revenues, what we projected in our prior work was 67.79 million. So that's pretty close. You know, those of you who pay attention to fund balance and cash and everything, within $1 million of being a balanced budget. Again, but we're in a position right now with regard to the existing, you know, the fund balance will be enough that would not matter a great deal to moving forward, if you were to adopt these budgets as is. Okay, so it's a pretty good start. I think we haven't been this close at this point in time in a long time. So we can begin where you want to begin. George?
Yeah. The question on the non-departmental, that number come from where, the 642?
That's from what we talked about. That's the increase of what we talked about from the first workshop. I believe that was 7.3.
That's 300,000 for the insurance and that? Yeah, 300,000. Did you also say the insurance was going up?
Yeah, the insurance is in that,
That's in the 642?
Wait a minute. Say that again so Diane can hear.
I said the 300,000 is included in the insurance increase.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And the other 342,000 came from what we added or subtracted or whatever?
Yeah.
So you hadn't printed that out to get,
No, we had not reviewed this. That non-departmental workshop included all those notes that we talked about.
okay. And I noticed in the engineering thing, you had a -1.
Yeah, well,
Did
we didn't-
hire enough engineers to come back? I
Yeah,
know we've
and
lost a bunch of
we
them.
supplemented that with people, with, you know, contract engineers too. And we're still in the budget, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. We have the director of, you know, a manager of engineers too in this budget. Is that not right?
It's in the budget.
Okay. So, but we're all right as far as going in, you know, with Christine, some of the departures we had, as well as some of the inspecting kind of engineering folks that we have. This is a budget that can be supported.
And these are all filled positions. These people.
These are going to be filled.
None.
No, I said they filled position. The 17 people here working, we actually have 17 people in those positions.
There's 17 in this new budget. There's 18 right now, budget control in the budget.
Just saying, but it's actually.
Going down one.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
The position control is 18.
We're getting off track already. The subject for this workshop was supposed to be police, fire, and public works.
Okay. Well, you said ask some questions, so.
Well, I did.
There's a sheet of paper with all this stuff on it.
So then we'll get into detail on engineering.
They don't put everything on it.
But
you wanna just do them three, just do them
basically,
three.
everybody understands the spreads, right? This is each department in total or individual. So if you want to start with where you want to start is, all
Well,
Yep.
let's start with the police department.
right?
So, in looking at the police department, we currently have 184 employees. You're proposing 203 employees. That's a gain of 19 positions in the police department. Is that correct?
That's correct. And let me, Chief, holler at me if I'm wrong. I think some of our analysis and where we needed to be, I think we had, right this moment, 128 sworn officers?
129 if you count the part-time.
Okay. And our statistics said we needed to be at 140. Well, this is, in the latter conversations, this is even 5 over that. So we're talking about our target is going to be 145 sworn officers.
145 sworn officers. Right,
And that's an increase of pretty good. So
that'd be 16.
16 of sworn officers and the rest is support. So,
And then there's dispatchers.
and then, yeah, 5 dispatchers, 5 dispatchers.
There's no way you're going to be able to get to that number by October 1st or by the time the budget is ratified.
We are pulling out all the tricks out of the bag right now. We've got a couple of shows set up where we're going to be trying to recruit officers. I mean, we're at a critical level right now. So we're doing everything that we can do. We'll hit the colleges.
Within 90 days of the fiscal year, you ought to be up to these numbers.
We're going to do our best. I mean, is that, yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
We're going to do our best to do that.
Okay.
Any questions by the council, Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, Chief, how many of those people are going to be in patrol cars? 19, how many are going to be actually in patrol cars, patrolling the city?
All 16 of those will be in a patrol car, after we get them trained, naturally. Then we're hoping to hire some that are already have some training.
So that could add more people to each shift that are gonna leave overtime?
What we'll do, it'll decrease overtime some. It'll also put more patrol officers out and more traffic officers out. We need traffic officers really bad out.
Yeah, you know, because everybody's hollering about speeding everywhere, so we need to have a bunch of policemen.
Right, that's what it'll do. So we would hope that from the hire date, within a year, hopefully within 6 or 7 months, we would have them on the road, through the academy and on the road.
And the other three, is that in dispatch or where are the other three? You said 16?
Yeah, there's
Five additional
16.
dispatchers,
Say again?
additional.
5 dispatchers. If you bring, the mayor said 145, so that would be 16, right?
Mr. Barrett?
16, it says that we're increasing by 19. 16 and 5 is 21. So is that 3 dispatchers?
4 dispatchers.
There needs to be a further adjustment to the information that you're holding. I did not have that. I had it, but I didn't know I had it in time for this meeting, and we had already sent that out. And when I learned it at 3 o'clock, it was too late to change everything.
That number will be 205 versus
206
206.
versus the 203.
So
But bottom line, of that 203, 128 right now are sworn officers, or 129.
That's right. Yes, sir.
So, you know, basically, our target, you know, with the arithmetic was, we want 145 people.
We want 145 on the road.
Sworn officers.
Right.
that's just my question about the number.
And we get there by two ways. We get there with 15 new added, get there with filling the vacancies that we have.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Deming.
I wanted to ask you too, Chief, I know we had a lot of problems the last year or so with animal control. Did you add more traps and more animal control people? That's been a big issue with the cats and everything, pretty much everybody's ward. So I was just wondering what we do about the animal control.
We have not added anything to animal control. I mean, we can look at that, but right now, we have not.
I mean, you know, the problem we've been having in different areas has been a lot of picking up cats and that, so. And people have complained a lot, you know, because they just seem to be more and more.
Right.
So I didn't know, I'd ask you before if there's anything else we could do for the person actually feeding the cats that causing the problem, and it's affecting the whole neighborhood. I don't know if there's any laws anywhere, or anything else you've seen in another city. That's something we could do maybe to control that. So I checked with you and Jerry Crewell, they're looking to that, both of those things.
But we can certainly take a look. And you know the 2 that we have now, they don't stop. They're running all the time.
Well, I know they always run out of traps, so are we gonna add more traps also
Right.
in the budget?
We can do that.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Deming?
Just, Mr. Chief, while you've got the mic, I'm not sure that I understood that conversation. Are there laws against feeding stray cats?
There's laws against, what we run into a lot of times is people are feeding stray cats on other people's property, or we'll set traps and they'll come and trip the traps. That's illegal.
Interesting, okay.
We do get a lot of complaints. There'll be particular people that feed a lot of cats and then they disturb the neighborhood. So we get a lot of complaints, a lot of cat calls. And most of the time they're complaining about somebody is feeding them.
Was cat calls, is that what made you laugh? We're in 8th grade?
That count is up, that cat call count is up now.
Chief, the county has an animal control department, don't they?
They have one person, yes.
Are they authorized to work within the city limits?
I'm sure they keep their hands full in the county.
I didn't know if
Yeah.
that was some way we could coordinate with them to maybe increase their manpower as well.
We can certainly look at that, but if you look in the county, we're going to be the ones with the problem, not the county. So
Right.
I'm sure they're not going to want to, but we
Well,
can ask.
I mean, we pay taxes to them. They get a lion's share of our money, so.
We can certainly ask.
The other thing I wanted to ask, just out of curiosity, from an accounting standpoint, how do we value adding officers? is there an algorithm that determines what is added to our budget per each officer, for example? And I am not a proponent of writing tickets or anything like that. However, the reality is there are tickets that are written. So do we code in a value for citations per officer written? And I don't think we should have a quota or anything like that, but I'm asking, do we take that into account?
We do not have a quota. And I think right now we're pulling down, we looked today, I think year to date, it's been about $600,000, maybe $650,000 roughly. And that's not just citations, that's fines, period.
Right, so I guess my question is, when we add new officers, do we add some proportional amount to our projected revenue?
No,
Why would we not?
no. You're talking about the fine amount?
Yeah,
That's set by the judge. I mean, that's something we can look at, but that's.
well, no, I mean, if every officer averages so many arrests or so many tickets every year, not based off a quota, the reality is they do write them. That is a stream of revenue, and every time you put more officers on the street, they're eventually going to write another ticket or more tickets. That creates revenue. At some point, it does.
It creates
Take that into account.
It creates a receivable. So based on the ground conditions in the court, that does not always translate into collectible. So that's an issue, and George brought that up a couple of times, and we looked at the number of citations trending based on ground conditions. So, how many, we were about 80%, maybe 60% of citations. So that's not a real valid way to offset, controlling,
Well, that's why I said at some level, there is, because that receivable at some percentage turns into a realization of money, whether it's through any step of the process, they pay it, or they go through court, or at some other point. But there's going to be a percentage of whatever we write versus what we collect.
That's the impact of more patrolmen on the ground, hopefully avoiding tickets, but, increase in public safety. I think that's the reason. We want more boots on the ground to prevent these kinds of things. And I think that was the result, not so much the dollars. We haven't considered that.
No, I'm not, I wasn't asking. I don't want to generate more revenue this way, but I wanted to know if we did account for it, because ultimately we should. And if we don't, there's.
Well, as we finalize the revenue part of the deal, that's where in the revenue control here, that number could be offset, could increase that number. Right now, I think we're at $500,000. Is that not right, Diana? So, I mean, if you think that those 5 more patrolmen would generate another $100,000, we can, in essence, offset that.
I was just curious if we already had something providing for that, but if we don't, that's fine. That's just more money at the end if we collect it, which, again, hopefully we don't, because hopefully no one commits a crime, and hopefully no one ever gets in trouble for anything. I'm done.
I have a question, Chief. What is being budgeted for overtime in the police department this year? Do we have a figure? Typically, I don't know, it's $900,000. Budget for overtime in the police department?
What's actuals today?
Taking a look right now, Diane may have that.
Current, year to date.
It's a general, and I'm not that worried about the police department with overtime, because we're pretty close to what we budget there. The fire department is always under budgeted, at least it has been in past years by quite a bit, but I just wanted to check on the police department, see if that's the case. Just kind of trailing Mr. Deming's comments, I don't think anybody's looking to add additional police officers so we write more tickets. Having said that, though, the biggest concern I heard this year campaigning was that speeding in the neighborhoods, and I think that's kind of just all through the city, blowing through stop signs, not stopping at intersections. So it'd be great if every once in a while, or on a regular basis would be better if we could have an officer in neighborhoods just monitoring the speed and issuing citations as needed. But that's a big concern from probably most constituents.
And it's variable year to year, especially against last year versus a year before last. I think, we had 3 or 4 events that impacted the overtime with regard to, cruising, scraping, and the other events. So I think roughly we were talking about $200,000 in overtime in this past year. So these 5 additional officers should reduce that somewhat, percentage, some proportional, but
It should reduce it some, but we still try to think ahead because we don't know if there's going to be, like the mayor said, a big event that pops up or a hurricane or something like that, so.
And I'm thinking if you have an increase in manpower, it's going to be less on overtime, generally
That's right.
speaking. But I know some of those events are all hands on deck sort of events. Okay.
And keep in mind, right now, we're bringing officers in from out of town, and that's eating
That'll
up
offset some of
overtime
that.
also.
All
yeah.
right. Mr. Glavine, question?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I am an advocate of writing tickets for speeding. It is something that is just, it overwhelms our neighborhoods, and like the council members have said, Paul particularly, we get a lot of calls speeding in our neighborhoods. Somebody almost hit my kid, you know, so I'm all for increasing the personnel. In that, is the training in personnel here, or is it in contractual services?
I think contractual.
Is that all inclusive in the training for your officers? Is it in personnel right here, the number I'm looking at?
Is it services and supplies?
It's all under training.
It's under training, so we got personnel, supplies, services, contractual, and capital outlay.
Right.
We don't have training. Is that a separate?
No, it's part of services.
511.
It's under services, okay, I just wanted to know that.
It's under,
What categories and services, isn't it?
No, it's all right.
But it's budgeted not in personnel.
in contractual.
Contractual, okay,
That one
thank
or
you.
that one.
Chief, do you have enough vehicles for these additional officers?
That's kind of touch and go right now. We're not sure. We really can't buy any vehicles right now. We're trying to, but we can't get them.
Right.
We ordered enough for this year. We may have to come back towards the end of the year and do a budget amendment because we'll see how many of them we hire that we can get on the road pretty quick, and then how many of them are going to go through the academy and then through the 480 hours of training that we have at the department. So it could be close to the next budget year before we actually get all of them on the road.
So you're dealing with the same issue everybody else is. If you want a new vehicle, you gotta wait.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Glavine.
Good, you're good. So on that point, is there any other special equipment that we need to have? I mean, not wish list, but we need to have?
We added it in there, vests and cameras, all that is
It's
like
in-
radios.
But is there any other special equipment? I mean, you see what's going on with New Orleans. I mean, just today, we heard about Bourbon Street. You know, there was a mass shooting in Bourbon Street, and the chief there said, we don't have enough officers, don't have enough, power, don't have enough equipment, to cover all these areas.
We're looking good with equipment, and as far as, we just recently bought some riot gear just to be prepared. So we have about a couple of dozen sets of that. We'll probably buy a little more of that. And then we have some field force training scheduled with us in the county and a few of the other cities, and that's basically riot control. We
Can-
have that training coming up.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
but
all right.
in the middle of this capital item, that is about, went up by about $312,000 from, $325,000. So capital in last year was 1.6. Right now, because of the things we're adding, 1.9.
Gotcha.
So some of the equipment that, the outfitting of the vehicles is in the budget already.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
All right, Mr. Barrett, anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So we're gonna have the increase of the 16 or so officers, 5 dispatch, which, if I'm reading this correctly, that's about $1,093,000 a year increase.
And bodies.
In personnel. As far as vehicles go, because I know that we've pushed this down the road a couple of years in the past, how many new vehicles are we getting? And that's in capital outlay, correct?
21.
15.
We're getting 15 new
No, I
vehicles?
think that's not correct.
Oh, wait, there's 15 in one spot.
Yeah, I
One's
think
for
it's
training,
21.
And then, he's.
23,
separating them all
I'm
out.
sorry, it's 23.
Some of them are trucks.
Yeah.
Crew cabs, yeah.
So we're getting everything we need that we pushed down the road, like in the past, because we were too tight on the budget?
Well, last year, we bought 16 vehicles, as I
We usually
recall.
buy around 15 or 16.
We're trying to get between 20 and 25% of our fleet replaced at the police department every year, so that everything doesn't get more than 5 years old, because these guys,
Yeah, they run the road
they run
nonstop.
24/7 almost.
Okay.
So this budget includes not only replacement of existing vehicles, but new vehicles for the new hires.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking that specifically is because when I get hit up by people, that way I know the right answer. So we're getting 15 new police cars and then several other vehicles for other things.
Support, yeah.
Correct.
They're all going to be police cars. They're just, some of them may be pickups and some of them may be, and we'll be buying whatever we can buy.
All right. Okay. All right, that's the only questions I have on the police.
Okay, Ms. Newman, any questions, concerns? Anybody else have any questions for the chief?
I do.
Mr. Lawrence?
When they ask you about the forfeiture money, are you still creating any money from that?
Yeah, forfeiture days, we have a little bit of forfeiture money left over, but forfeiture days are really, it's kind of something of the past. You don't see those big forfeitures anymore. We haven't for the last 3 or 4 years, actually. You know, where one time a big forfeiture would have been $100,000 off the interstate, you may pick up $2,500 or $5,000. Most of it's being moved electronically now instead of, you know, actually physically moving it around the country.
So that just continue to shrink.
Oh, it's, yeah, almost non-existent, really.
All right. And question for Fofo. How come we don't get a breakdown like the police department and fire department, like that, about the forfeiture money, overtime money, like a list of everything? We used to give us that. We had everything listed.
We got it in detail if you want.
I'm just, we never get, I don't ever see that. We just got a bulk amount of money. But if it's broken
That's
down,
a summary. If you want that, you get the details. The same thing with equipment. You know, she's got the whole details of everything that's in capital. And, you know, that's available department by department or section by section. What do you want? You want the whole department?
well, during the workshop, this should be, we have that in front of us for this department, all of
We
them.
got it. I mean, we can make you a copy of it, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, I like, yeah, everybody needs one of them for each one of them. I mean, like I know about the forfeiture money, the overtime money, what it is. Some of the questions be answered just looking at the sheet, you know. So I mean, I like to have that for all these departments.
Well, if
If
you
we
want,
can
we'll
do
get
that
it to
now.
you. Anybody else want any details on that? I mean, I'll be happy to do that. We've got it, Jody Mann's, and that's what they grinded out. The nuts and bolts, you know, get up to here.
I know that's a bulk amount of money. Yeah, it's 19 million, whatever it is. I'd like to know how it's just broken down, that's all.
All right.
The same way with the fire department and the public works, the next two we're getting ready to do.
Jody?
I just have a question. Mayor, we have that department of service where it says personal services, services and charges and capital outlay, and all those numbers.
Yeah,
Break down to 3 categories, just like the mayor has. It breaks it down to personnel, supplies, services and charges, and capital. You want a list of what they're buying with the capital money? Is that what you want?
No. He just wants the whole personnel service, how much overtime, that sort of thing.
Got
Just the
individual line
vertical
items.
Of this thing.
You have individual line items, I'd like to have that sitting in front of us where we could look at it. That's all. I think everybody like to have that in front of them.
They all care.
I mean, it just makes it a lot easier when we're looking at that.
Yeah,
you know.
what is it? It's all police department.
All right, any other questions from the
Section.
council? Thank you, chief.
We'll get you,
TMI, chief, TMI, okay.
So I think you'd have to agree that with this budget, we're, Biloxi, city of Biloxi is refunding the police.
Go right back to it like, I'll just show you.
Boom. Okay, that brings us to the next department. We'll go with the fire department.
our department.
So I just-
All right.
How much hurt matches are final?
Similarly,
Now can I flip right back to the,
Here's,
go sit.
right below the fire department, and we're staying at the same level. I think we actually grew that personnel about $32,000, but in total for the whole department, there was some equipment, I think 3 fire trucks. If you look in the top of the page, there's about 1.145 million in increase, both wages and salary sales, personnel services, as well as equipment in the capital outlay, which is about net change of about 800,000. We're about 1.187 worth of equipment, right? And that's the bulk of the increase. 3 fire trucks, is that not right?
3 fire trucks.
But
we're
the same personnel, but increasing about 3 fire trucks and some support stuff with that.
So we're budgeting for 3 fire trucks next year?
Yeah.
How much do those trucks go for?
$500,000.
$500,000 each. Are they gonna be like the most recent ones we bought, those green vehicles, I think they called them?
I think I would defer to the police department, the fire department that's here, but I think they're all pumpers. They're all not ladder trucks.
Yes, sir. We're all looking at engines. We will have to replace. So this year, we're looking at the average age right now, even with those 2 new trucks, we're looking at 13 years. We generally get about 20 years out of an apparatus before we have to replace. And we can put that in a spare type setting, but typical by our standards, we go about 20 years. So if we go average age of our fleet, it's 13 years on, doesn't matter if you look at engines or ladders. So we bought the 2 new clean cab concept. Everybody's been real receptive, so we were going to try to go back with that with our cancer prevention efforts. We're going to develop a apparatus committee, explore different options, new developments, new equipment, that sort of thing to throw into them. But yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Geiser. Questions? Mr. Glavin, we'll start on your end. Any questions or?
Let me add something that Diana just mentioned too. The total figure for the equipment and capital items, I think it's about $175,000 per building too. Is that in part of that? No. So that's the figure in addition to the equipment and the support vehicle.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Glavin.
When we built the new fire station and training facility, we anticipated that other fire stations or other cities would use that facility for training, and maybe it would generate some revenue for us. Is that happening or?
Typically, we are not generating revenue that way. It's more set up to, we provide them a service, they will provide us a service. It's saving us in training costs. We don't typically generate, or the way the state is set up, we put on a class through the state academy. They would come, we invite other departments to come in and do it. The state actually does the billing, so they will separate. If I've got 7 students in it, we pay a certain amount. It's all prorated per student. What it does allow us to do is to return the favor to departments that have been giving us. Pascagoula allowed us to put 5 of our students in a hazmat training over there, free of charge. So it's more a goodwill type deal. Now we have offered the training facility to D'Iberville. They'll bring certain equipment that's available to them and let us use it and that sort of thing.
A little bit of cost avoidance, I guess.
Okay. All right. I have a question. Is there anything in this budget that we've left out that's essential that you would have a wish list that you need the council to be aware of?
Not offhand.
The mayor said no, but.
No, sir. I mean, the 3 engines would be a great step towards the right direction. I know we're going to have to replace a ladder truck. We've still got a couple more years in that life of the ladder truck up at Station 7 in the north part. We've got a couple, we've got 2 command vehicles here, and I think we had cut 2 of the other staff admin vehicles that we had originally kind of thought about it, but we can go another year or 2 before we have to really replace those.
Okay. And then a final question. I know y'all are on top of this, but any of the communication equipment, repeaters, or to be able to communicate effectively with your radios and communication?
Typically, our portables, we replace as needed. I know we've had several issues, but Hurricane's been great with us, so we just kind of do it on a case by case.
Nick, I think we're also in the middle of FirstNet too. That's sort of a AT&T network situation.
Yes, sir.
As far as cell towers being down, and you've got an ability to avoid, our equipment being down, and so that's a pretty good deal. It's a nationwide FirstNet, I think, and AT&T. It's an AT&T sponsored deal.
Yes, sir. So
all the fire departments using their communication.
Yes, sir. All command staff, everybody there, and they've been great. As far as the FirstNet capabilities, every storm that we had come in from an EMA perspective, they would call me, tell me that they had something staged in Hattiesburg, and they could have us set up city communications as far as cell service within a couple hours pending road traffic and debris, that sort of thing. So we've really been pleased with them as far as communication.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing else.
Mr.
Council
Barrett,
President.
anything?
Councilman, I just want to point out, just to make sure you don't miss it, we talked about the trucks and the fire stations, and as you know, fire station number 7, we're paying as we go. That was a lease purchase. Also, the 2 fire trucks last year was a lease purchase. If you look on your spread, the big sheet, you'll see there's a debt service category, and against the fire department, you'll see that the debt service goes from $531,009 up to $768,000. That represents the increase in debt service that we'll pay annually for the
New equipment.
the 3 new fire trucks when we add that debt service to what we're already paying for the fire station and the other 2.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Mr. Barrett, anything? Mr. Deming, anything? Mr. Lawrence?
I'm, as a councilman who sets the budget and votes on this budget, I'm requesting that we have printouts of each one of these departments.
Okay?
Each one of them, and everybody should have one. We set this budget, we vote on this budget, and y'all just throwing numbers at us.
No, we're
and
not
look-
throwing numbers
Just
at you.
listen, wait a minute. We do this, Fofo, that's our job. So I need more information to save myself a lot of trouble. It can't be hard to print out these sheets and give it to us at each one of these meetings. So I'm requesting as a councilman from the city and you as the mayor,
Okay,
to give me, not this little 19 million and go down this list here. We're doing the fire
let me see if
department,
I
like
can
Mike
repeat what
said.
you're asking
doing the
for,
fire
okay?
department, then I want the fire department budget in front of me, period.
That's easily done. We'll do that. And-
So I like to have the
and
police
look at-
department, the fire
all-
department.
Let me say this about this process, that those details make this the summary, okay? It's not a problem. What you ask for it, we'll get it to you. Okay? Anybody else wants it? We'll get it too. We'll print a copy of it. But you got to trust, this is a process that we go through, and they've been grinding this stuff out. And you just don't make up these numbers. Those numbers that you're asking for
And so
roll up to
nobody-
this.
Nobody said anything about making up anything.
Yeah, well, you act like you
What
know,
I'm
you don't
doing
trust
is
these
there's
numbers.
a
We're making
council-
these numbers up, but we're not. They're actually computed, and they're working through that. So we'll get that for you. That's all you have to say. Ask, we'll get it for you.
Okay, when you, still, I like to have a copy.
You'll get a copy.
Rest of the copy, like, they like to have a copy. So, I mean,
All right, thank you.
no?
That's salaries. We don't get-
Ms. Newman, anything? Okay, thank you. My only question, Mr. Geiser, your overtime, do you know what you're budgeted for overtime this year?
Overtime is staying the same, I think, budgeted. I'm not aware of what we're sitting at currently.
Typically, it's been about 400,000, maybe 500,000 a year, and it usually ends up running, that's what you're budgeted, but it usually ends up running about 900,000, about the same as the police department, so just a heads up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for the fire department? Mr. Guines, anything?
Uh,
I'll come back to you, Mr. Lawrence.
I can barely hear you.
You voted yes?
Do you have any
Voted yes.
questions for the fire department?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lawrence has do you have a
That
question?
was on next. On the overtime, is that because we lack of a full-time fireman, or just something that happened no matter what you do?
Well, currently, our minimum staffing each day is 48. We currently are running only 51 per shift. So that takes, as soon as we have vacation, FMLA, workman's comp, that sort of thing, we're getting into our hiring. It's something that we've been doing here lately. We're working on recruitment efforts. We're working on getting hirees in, but it's a struggle with the current situation and the way things are.
So what do you need, like on the truck, you need 3 or 4 people to have a full crew?
Yes, sir. To be minimum staff, we need 3 per engine. That's 11 engines. We've got 3 ladder trucks. That's 3 people per ladder truck. We've got a heavy rescue. We've got an air truck. We've got a couple other support vehicles that are staffed, tankers, that sort of thing out in the Wool Market area to provide adequate service and keep us at that fire rating of 2.
Thank you.
Just one other comment, a general comment, and this applies not only to the fire department, but to the police department, and that is, given your current staffing, you have employees who are injured, you have employees who are sick, you have employees who are trying to take vacation, and just with the staffing situation being what it is, it's tough to make it go and stay fully staffed or as close to being fully staffed as you can. And particularly, folks like to take vacation when they feel like they need a vacation, but it's got to be managed, particularly managed under the circumstances where you have a tough time staying fully staffed. But with all the injuries that you have, surgeries, those kind of things associated with the job, I mean, at some point in the future, it'd be nice if we even beefed up the number in the department a little more. You need a few, I don't want to say float or slack something, because people are always absent for one reason or another, and they're legitimate reasons they're absent. But that results in more overtime.
Let me say, one of the challenges in the police department is to give somebody a weekend off, not just and that's in all of the departments, but you got, as Nick was talking about, so many personnel per equipment, and you got so many people that are scheduled vacations, and people get sick. So, I mean, it is a challenge in both of those, because it's the bulk of where we are, the numbers of, items that need to be scheduled and rotated. So there's some complexity in trying to do the right thing, give everybody a fair shot at a weekend off every once in a while.
Right, it's just, I know it becomes a morale issue. Thank you, that's the only point I wanted to make. Which department do we want to go to next? Administration, executive, legislative?
There's only,
I'm sorry. Okay. Are we getting to Public Works next? Okay. Do you have a question about fire, George?
Fire, the fire and the police department both, the two captains, how many people y'all are gonna lose next year, like retire or leave?
We looked at that the other day, and I think we could lose 14.
You're gonna lose 14 people.
Could lose
retire.
14. Some of them will have 25 years, in excess of 25 years. Some of them will have maybe 21 years, but they had 4 years of military, and that can count towards their retirement. So some of them will do a full 25 years, and some will stay. So it's kind of hard, but we have about 14 that we could lose.
If we do lose them, part of the drill is that we'll advertise for a replacement of that. So the total figure is in the whole budget. So I mean that's a consideration, that we'll lose so many, but we'll also do in the middle of the year advertise as needed.
Right. That's right. We'll be advertising all the time.
All the time.
Probably for the next couple of years, the way things are now.
May I ask, do you have any in the pipeline coming?
No, we're taking applications right now.
None in the pipeline.
There's nothing, we don't have anything. We hired 3 the other day. Looks like we're going to end up with 2 of those. One of them went out right after she was hired with an illness, and I don't think she is going to come back. So,
And the fire department, same thing, same question.
Yes, sir. As far as available to retire, we're looking at least probably 25 that could go right now, if not more. That was due to the big hiring when we annexed Wool Market. There were large groups that were being hired. They're coming available because that was the 98, 99 timeframe. And just like Chief Miller said, they've got 4 years of leave or military time, or they worked at another department and came over as a lateral, that sort of thing.
So you're talking about 5, you said 5?
25 or more.
25?
Yes, sir.
Ooh.
I'd like to pipe up one little thing here. When I talk to the fire department, and I think both Chief Davis and Chief Geiser would agree with me on this, the number one problem that I hear from the rank and file firefighters is they don't get enough, they can't take time off because our staffing is so tight. Now, we talked about putting an additional 15 firefighters in, that would be 5 per shift. Into the budget. They're not in the budget right now, although we intend to have those 15 additional firefighters. We will be applying for a SAFER grant, and it's 100% funded for 3 years. And we're applying for 50, and the council will be approving our application for a SAFER grant to add 15 additional firefighters. They're not in the budget right now, but we intend to do that this year.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Barrett.
One more question. Of these 179 that were in the budget this year, last year, and for the upcoming year, how many of those do we have? How many vacancies of that 179 are there?
I think listed, we have 8. It's not counting, it hadn't been updated for Chief Boney and things like that. I think we're looking at 10 vacancies
So we
currently.
have around 170 then.
Correct, yes, sir.
Anything else, or are we done
A
with?
question to Mike,
Please,
uh,
Mr. Lawrence?
If we got, those people, do we train them? You're talking about the one that come we have them for 3 years.
Yeah, I had a session with Chief Geiser and Chief Davis earlier this week where we talked about training. The fire academy is so backed up that we can't get anybody into the fire academy, so we've got our own in-house training going on. And that's one of the things we can do because you helped us buy a training tower, and we've got a Fire Station 7 with a training complex in it. So we've got facilities that we didn't have before, so we can do the training in-house.
And we did that, they would still pay for it 3 years. Even though we trained them ourselves, that's still good for us. You're talking about it's a 3-year deal, they pay for 3 years, correct?
The SAFER grant, that's a federal grant, will pay for 3 years at 100%, and then we pick it up.
Yeah, I understand, but I said if we.
No, it's our intent to add 15 firefighters this year, but we're going to do it with that grant and not with the budget, and not in the budget today.
There would be a budget amendment to add the personnel and also receive the revenue from the SAFER grant, so that would net impact the budget.
Okay, that's good for us. That's a good thing. Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to Public Works.
Okay?
Oh, did you bring it back to me?
On the, I think the spreadsheet shows that we've increased that by about 10 folks primarily. And, the budget for Public Works, handles a lot of the cleaning and beautification. So that was a push. And we, a part of that Public Works budget, which is going from 66 to 76 folks, increased by about $400,000 in the wages and salaries, but there's a significant amount of equipment. But overall, the budget increased by
Right at $1 million.
about $1,015,000. And capital equipment for Public Works was 968, right? 968,000?
No, it went up 968.
Yeah, up by 968.
Increase.
The other rates here, in case you had anything very specific, but, that was some of our idea we've got to, along with Parks and Recreation, we've increased by about 15 people to get out and keep Biloxi clean. So that's a strong impact of what we're trying to do with this increasing, the number of folks, 32, I think, in total, to make sure we keep this place safe, friendly, and beautiful. The whole budget will reflect that.
Couple of questions right off the bat. Looking at the contractual, there's a decrease of $437,000. What accounts for that?
The most of our contractual services in Public Works is done through what we call the repair replace contract, which is an IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract that we have multi-year. So that's all the drainage and as you remember, Hampton Lane, for example, that's how Public Works does those jobs. It basically is, we're contracting out to these contracts.
Different, so let me jump into it, Mike. I think a lot of that was based on the reduction in budget from HCUA. Okay, the garbage, the garbage sanitation, which was the garbage pickup, it has been reduced by that amount.
Okay, so that's
But,
what
Mike,
accounts for that. It's related to garbage and trash pickup, landfill costs, those
that's
kinds
right.
of things.
As opposed to the budget, yeah.
Okay. The other
But
question.
let me jump in. Both there and Parks and Recreation, we kind of kicked up some things where if it's easier to contract these services, we've actually implemented about 100,000 each. So if it's cheaper to, buy the maintenance of a ballpark or whatever, that's in the budget too. So, if we're able to do this in a more effective way, that's in the budget. That would be found in the contractual services. But a major reduction at 430, I think you asked, well, it went down, but the major part of it was the reduction in HCUA garbage collection.
And the additional 10 positions, the proposed 10 positions, are those all for Public Works or any of those for water and sewer?
Utilities, all public
All
works.
public
All
works.
Public Works.
That's what Billy Ray asked us for. He asked us for 5 more bodies in each of his north and south crews. So, but we're, in addition to those bodies, we're adding a substantial amount of new equipment. And I've got that equipment list, but we're talking about special mowers that reach out and can do ditches. Talked about bucket trucks, we're talking about backhoes.
Do you have a list of that?
I have a list, I'd be happy to provide you what
Where's
we
that
asked.
accounted for in the budget?
That's gonna be under capital outlay, but can I
That's
get,
it.
And I've got an increase of capital outlay of $60,000.
you must have an old sheet.
No,
I've
that's
got
fiscal year
968.
21, Robert.
Can we get a copy of that,
Yeah.
Liz,
Yeah,
of equipment?
I had it here just a minute ago.
Right there, so. 22, 1028.
Make a copy for George, too. All right, good. This is capital items.
You want them both of them?
Okay, I'm not sure where we were, but Ms. Newman, any questions about Public Works, concerns, comments?
Here's the,
Yeah, there's an increase in Parks and Rec by 4 people and then 10 in utilities. We haven't really decided on a reorg to address some very specific, but there's probably some creative thinking when it comes to scheduling and using contractual services to offset what we need to do. We've got to touch these properties and touch these assets, in a more timely fashion based on the season of the year and what we can do to improve, like the ball field. We talked a little bit about turf. Putting turf out there, that will offset some of these things, but that's a, significant, about $750,000 to actually put the turf where we can attract more, sports tourism situation. But there'll be some offset, to not having to maintain that sort of thing too. But we're having some conversation about that.
Right, has Ms. Bell discussed with you irrigation and correcting some of the problems with the Pops Ferry Sports Complex area?
I think I'm not sure where she's going to be here. We're going to do that today.
I don't know if that's been accounted for, and we'll talk more about that, that's fine.
But let me jump in too. These 14 bodies, along with the 10 that he already has, maybe subject to some reorganization. We're going to really take an operations research attack on that, and couple with what we can do to, like the ball fields, do the things we do that will attract these new things. So there may be some significant reorganization in how we cut the grass.
Right. Well, one question I was going to ask about what I just discussed, would that fall under the Parks and Recreational budget, or would that fall under Public Works?
Part of it. Part of it will be Parks and Rec. That will be, but the whole thing, is beautification, and doing the things we need to do. So, we've got a significant amount of new streets that were done that requires attention. And, right-of-ways that are done that requires attention. And we need more horsepower, more manpower to do what we need to do.
Right.
And if we don't mind calling on some existing crews within Parks and Recreation, if we can form what they do now and put them in a different mode to help us do what we got to do.
Right, and I think there's some resources in different departments that we can use, and I was talking to members from some of the other departments about using those assets, and we'll talk later about maybe tapping into that. I don't know if it's appropriate for this budget session right now, but I know Nathan and I were discussing today, he was talking about the added capital for Public Works, and we also talked about adding more contractual labor to help do some of the routine stuff. My question is, contractual laborers, is that appropriate for easements? I know we'd started doing this on properties.
Could be. We use contractual services to cut the property we own now.
Right, but is it appropriate for easements on private property that you just given us?
Could be. As long as, as long as the lawyer tells us we can do that. But everything is on the table. Whatever the most effective way to touch what we got to touch in a timely manner. So, if we actually go turf a couple of fields, and you got 5 or 6 people that are no longer cutting the grass, doing those activities, and we're going to shift them to doing the things. They may lie in the Parks and Recreation Department, but the whole aspect of that operation is going to change.
Go ahead, Ms.
Why are we
Newman.
not utilizing inmates to help?
Well, we've looked at that a couple of times, and, given the last year and a half, and there's a significant amount, you got to have a 1 for 3. So you got to add another qualified person to handle 3 prisoners.
And we don't have that?
Well, we don't have it yet. We don't have it yet, but we're looking into the whole thing.
Yeah, one of the tricky things about using the prisoners is that the sheriff will not let us use anybody that's in jail at the Harrison County unless they were arrested in Biloxi. So that limits the population that we got to pick from. And then you have to have the guard or supervisor with them, so that it doesn't come free. It's not worth, and you got to feed them, yeah, but it's worth considering.
Could we utilize them along with whoever we're using, say it's Public Works that's doing it, they can have their supervisor supervise them and they're working together?
Well, we're working on that, but, again, Troy in Harrison County, that whole ballgame has changed. I think right now, Chief, we can only put 5 people in jail.
Yeah, we can't even do that. We probably, it's by charge now that we're implemented the COVID regulations, so it's by charge. The inmates that you're talking about, we have to put an officer through a training program before they'll let us take them, and then they're completely ours once we take them away, so they have to be monitored constantly.
Yeah, it's a 1 for 3, I think.
Not saying, like the mayor said, not saying it couldn't happen, but it's not free.
But you said, so regardless of how absurd I think that idea that they have to be arrested in Biloxi is, when you say it's by charge, what does that mean?
Yeah, he'll naturally, by law, he has to take felony charges regardless. But on misdemeanor now, I think they'll take stalking. There's about 5 different misdemeanor charges is all that they will accept right now. So like trespassing, they will not accept anybody for trespassing. And he has that right.
But that pool is not like it used to be, is what I'm trying to say. That pool of opportunity with regard to using some of that labor. You used to see it all over the place, especially at the interstate, on the interstate picking up garbage.
Yeah.
If they have to be arrested in Biloxi, is that a law, or is that just something that he's implemented within his department?
I'm not sure.
I can find that out. I'm not sure.
I mean, because I'm sure that a lot of our tax dollars ends up going into that sheriff's department budget. And so,
Well, 2/3 of his budget is operating the jail.
yeah, so in my opinion, unless that's some type of law, I think that's.
Well, I'm thinking
Could we hand the chief a mic, microphone,
Nathan, will you use your
please?
mic?
Thank you.
It's white.
But talking to it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I can only guess, I think part of that probably is, once somebody's in the county jail, the city or the county are still responsible for them, whoever made the arrest. So we're responsible for their medical bills if they get injured in the jail. It's not the county or the Board of Supervisors, it's absolutely the city that arrested them. So in his defense, he's probably, other cities would probably not want a Gulfport guy working in Biloxi getting hurt, and the Gulfport's got to fit the bill for it. So I got to believe it's probably something to do with that.
Okay.
Ms. Newman, did you have any more questions, Public? Mr. Lawrence?
And I know you've been talking about this a lot for the beautification. Is this going to be, this is all they're going to do? That crew you hiring, they're going to take care of the city, keep the highway clean, the streets clean?
Whatever needs to be clean, that's additional to what we have. We got a crew in the north and a crew in the back within Public Works. But we're adding 10 more folks, 5 in each crew, plus equipment, plus, whatever supplies and services to keep it running. That's in this budget. The ability to use the 10 new folks are in the budget.
It's probably one of the biggest complaints we've had in the last 5 or 6 weeks is make sure the city cleans up the city. That's a big thing. I keep telling you, you're setting up the program to do that. So we got to make sure we have that follow through on that. When the streets are not clean and the yard's clean, people get upset. So some of these things we got to make sure we get it done and show the people that we are truthfully going to do this the right way. Because it makes a difference when you set it clean. You know, we're a tourist town. You want people to come to this town, they want it to look
I
good.
warned you in one of the workshops that this is going to be an uplift as far as money, and it is, and it's primarily to do that. The increase in labor is to do that, in both Parks and Recreation, and utilities, and police and fires to keep it safe, friendly, and beautiful. This is a result of trying to do what you just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that's a key thing. I mean, you know yourself, a lot of people call you and say the same thing.
Yep.
All the wards get the same thing, clean up the city, clean up the city. All right, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Lawrence?
No, I was just looking at some of this stuff.
All right, Mr. Denman, question or comment? I'll come back to you, George.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, George. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna ask Billy Ray the same question. In your department, Billy Ray, how many people you think are gonna leave your department?
Retire.
How many gonna leave your department?
Nobody's retiring in Billy Ray's department.
Can we get a mic for Mr. Allen? Thank you.
People don't usually retire from Public Works, they just wear out.
I'm gonna have one that's gonna retire this year, and that's Craig Upton. He's got his time in, and he's gonna go. I even asked him to stay, and he said, "No, I've done my time. I'm ready to go."
And in your department, you have a problem with the minimum wage? That we too low in some of these prices, some of the stuff we need to look at, the 10, 11, 12 hour. Are we gonna look at that too, Fofo?
We've looked at the base in each one of these departments and done some adjustment, and we had to push up some stuff too. So the increase in, I think the numbers that you said are reflective in the up. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. We have, all right. We've uplifted some of those that, this is a competitive market. People, we want to make sure that, go from the ground up. Now, in talking with Mr. President of our council head, in things, where we roll through, coming from October 1 to January, there may be some, especially if we wind up really, increasing in some of the things, ending the year with the, $15 to $16 million in fund balance, then between October 1 and we could really get these across, all these lines. But the whole idea was to reorg the way we're looking at wages and salaries from in Billy Ray's case, utility crew 1, 2, and 3, and supervisors, as well as, police and fire. But, we've got to have some really reflective of how we're going to do not only this year, but 5 years down the road. There's some things that we kicked around as far as, a little bit better stepping. You go by a year, and if we're actually in a mode where we can afford to give a bump from one step to the other, we're trying to define the job steps in each one of these job classes. And we would probably, have some recommendations after October 1. To answer the question, though, we have uplifted some of all of these, base levels to get to, an acceptable, competitive rate. We want people to work. We want people to be happy to work. And we've done a little bit of that. We can always, we can do better if the numbers show us that we can afford not only this current year, but 2 or 3 years down the road. It's a complex kind of animal that we've tried to put together, but we're going to do it. I think we're looking, the insurance committee met yesterday, and this is all part of, the big picture on what we can do. So we can, some people, would rather have the rate versus the benefit, and I think that's a challenge we have. I don't know if we can, attack that and be successful in the next, couple of weeks, but certainly by the end of the year, we can put a component together that will, our employees can expect to see some progress if they do a great job or a good job. So I don't know if that answers your question
Just
or
like you
not.
said yesterday with the insurance committee, we sat there for 3 hours, pretty much like we were revamping the whole program.
Yep.
To benefit the employees and try to save a bunch of money so we can keep the insurance.
Healthy.
They have a rich insurance.
Have
plan.
healthy programs
And we'll meet again Monday.
Yeah.
And we're meeting constantly to make sure we stay on top of that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Denman?
While you're on the topic of pay, the administration, you guys are really good at giving us graphs and charts and data, showing us how competitive we are with the other cities when it comes to water rates or sewage or things like that. Is there any information, do you have it? And if you do, can you provide it to us, showing us where we are at as a competitive basis regarding Ocean Springs, Gulfport, and the cities around us for everybody's pay?
Well, I don't know that all of us are around. I know what we pay, and I know a big significant part of compensation, the real compensation. But some people, I know Gulfport and I know Ocean Springs, they don't do what we do. They don't do, you don't work a month and get, 1.5 days of vacation anywhere except in Biloxi. So how do you dollarize that? You can work a year and get 18 days of vacation. Now, how do you dollarize that and compare it to Southern?
You take their rate of pay and multiply it. That's an easy way to dollarize. But most people just look at the bottom line and they say,
That's
oh,
right.
Biloxi's
Most
paying X
people are
amount.
looking at just what they get paid.
That's right. I just want to know where we are competitively with the other cities. If you have that information, can you share it? If you don't, I understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, to look at the whole compensation, those are things that, are part of the deal. And you got 18 days of vacation, 6 days of sick leave, plus everything else. I mean, we can get that together and say where we are. I don't know how to compare, what Ocean Springs does or Gulfport, but we can certainly do that for us.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barrett, questions?
Yes, I have several comments and some questions as well. So we're hiring, in Public Works, we're hiring 10 new employees, and 5 of those will be with the north, 5 will be with the south.
Now, that's in general, and that's not necessarily true.
Okay, well, so let me throw this out there. In 2003, and the north, just to put it into perspective, my ward alone makes up about 55% of the city's land. That's not counting Mr. Demings and Mr. Glavin's, which the north covers. In 2003, the North Division had 21 employees. In 2007, we had 18. In 2012, we had 13, and now we have 10. Now, 10 employees in the north that work for Mike. If 5 of these aren't going to be dedicated to the north, and not to mention that, at least 5 weeks out the year, which is 10% of the work time of these employees, they're pulled to the south, which is 10% of the work time that work should be taking place in the north. They're pulled to the south for events such as Mardi Gras, cruising the coast, scraping, spring break. Whenever seats need to be pulled out the Singer Theater, they're pulling seats out instead of mowing the grass, digging the ditches, and those things that need to be taking place in our ward. That's 10% of the year. So not only are we extremely short-staffed for what is a huge area of our city, disproportionate, they're also being pulled to the south. Now, I'm encouraged to see that we're getting some of this equipment because there's many times that we need equipment and we can't use it because it's being used in the south and we don't have access to the vacuum trucks and things. And so my point being is 18 years ago, we had double the workers in the north that we have now. And so we need an increase in workers that are going to be working in the north on a consistent basis. Right now, we are so far behind on everything up there, they can't keep up because of the lack of adequate employees and the lack of equipment. And so I don't understand how we're going to justify, we're going to hire 10 new people, but they're not going to be allocated to an area.
Well, again, this is an operations research thing. What needs to be done when they need to do it? That's the first thing. Whether it's in you or it's in your ward or anywhere. We've got a pool of things we will reorganize such that it gets done in a timely manner. We may have 10 or 15 people from the south being there to do a certain thing at a certain time. That's where we need a little bit of operations input. I'm not saying, just because they call it the north and the south, we need people doing the things that need to be done.
And I understand everybody works for Biloxi, and that's the way it should be. But I can guarantee you that the 10% of the time that these guys are pulled to the south, the same thing is not happening in our ward. None of these
Yeah,
workers that work in the
let-
south are coming to the
Let me say
north.
this, let me say, you'll have the opportunity, and we'll have the opportunity to say, what needs to be done? If, Mike, and, you and I know, we see him every Thursday morning. Hey, he knows what he's got to do, he's not having the manpower to do it. What is it going to take? Can you buy it, or can can you pull it from other things? I want a pool of labor, a pool of services that can be provided, one way or the other. I'm telling you, I don't know where the north and the south, it's a crew, it's a.
And I understand that, and that's the way it should be, but my point being is these guys from the south aren't coming to the north and helping to cut the grass and things like we are to set up the
Grass needs to be
barricades
cut, we know that.
and all of these things.
And that's what we're going to try and do, is get an attack on what needs to be done, when it needs to be done.
And then my second question is, I went and met with Mike, and he gave me a list of things, and I think I see all these things on that list, but just to verify, we are buying an 8-yard dump truck and go ahead. What? So a dump truck, a backhoe, a vacuum truck, and the tractor with the arm. So we are getting all of that equipment.
The mowers.
And some mower, okay. So as far as equipment, that's fine. And then my next thing is I would like to see, not just we'll look at it, I would like to see a portion of contractual services allocated to cleaning easements. In my ward, and I know it's like this in every ward throughout the city, we have areas that just aren't draining. In my area, it was annexed in 1999, and there's easements that people can't keep up. I'm talking, these are major easements. People would have to go buy commercial-grade equipment to keep these easements cleaned. And not one time in 22 years have these easements been cleaned. They have trees 4 foot around growing in them. And trash is backed up because of the trees growing in them, the bushes growing in them, the silt that's filled them in. And so I would like to see, and I'm proposing that we set aside to hire a company, because our guys can't do it. We can't keep up with everything that we have to keep up with, even with 10 additional people. I would like to see a portion of this or even additional put in, and not just for my ward, but all the wards, because we all face this problem of a portion of the contractual services put in to where it is designated specifically for hiring outside help to get these easements cleaned
And we
up.
did input in both places $100,000 for contractual services for that specific reason. Now, maybe it needs to be more. If it needs to be more to do the things that we do to free up and make our labor be able to service those things, we'll come back. If it needs to be $200,000 for each department, we'll do that. But right now, we did plan on, buying some services where we can't provide it. And that's all. But, the whole thing is to figure out what are our needs? What needs to be done? When does it need to be done? In the springtime. That's the beauty of doing some contractual stuff, is that, you can tell them, I need it this date, do the scheduling. But it's a tremendous amount of scheduling challenge that's going to have to be done within our organizations.
Councilman.
I think Billy wants to speak.
The money's been there, Nathan. All he had to do is come and say, hey, I need this over here done. It's the same principle as we're doing with the drainage system, where we get the money out of contractual services in order to have it repaired. And he could have came any time. You could have even called me, and I could have just had the money transferred to the north.
Well,
if I had to.
Let me add some.
Mike will tell you that.
Let me add something to you. It was a surprise to me. I sit on the Development Commission, Harrison County Development Commission, and I just learned at our last meeting that they're doing ditch cleaning by contract. They've got 2 contractors doing ditch cleaning to augment their staff. And I've asked to get some information on that, because that might be something we could do with another separate contract, just buying it. It's a unit price per foot.
And there may even be some grants out there, some match grants or something, we could get money for this. But I mean, it's something that I email you and bring to your attention regularly of these issues that we have. And I have a list, and I just printed out some of them. I was just asking for issues. And this is just of emails of major drainage issues because our culverts are collapsed, or they're not clean, or the ditches are setting lower than the culverts, and things need to be regraded. The ditch hasn't been cleaned out for years, And the list just goes on and on. We have major, major drainage issues throughout our ward. It's not just in one area, it's throughout the ward. And it's something that we have to address, because if we don't, it's just going to continually get worse and worse and worse. And it's something that we have to address and take care of.
Well, we're attacking it as we feel like we have the utilities to, to go forward with it. You keep in mind, the Wood Market, master plan, two of those big projects were part of this deal that, the infrastructure work, water sewer that's coming down. So I think, 4 million of the possible 24 million will be, based on the master plan to address it. It's just a whole lot of stuff to do. We've got to organize it so that we can, get a grant if it's through the, the information and the 1.8 billion that's coming down. But we just got to, quantify it and then figure out how we're going to do it.
All right, that's all I have.
That was enough.
Hey, I didn't say much on all the
Did a
others.
good job, Mr. Glavin.
Questions I have, I noticed that in contractual, we're reducing 437,000. Personnel, we're increasing 404,000. Is that the sanitation?
Yeah, sanitation charge primarily was the reduction in the budget that we were doing for HCUA.
I got you. Okay. My next question, Mayor, would be our interlocal agreement with the county. We're talking about our budget. Do we need to press the county to use their resources to give us some assistance and coordinate those efforts? Because they have equipment, they have personnel, and it seems like when they get on it, they can go to their yard and get all this equipment and come through and blaze a trail. I mean, it's like Desert Storm sometimes if they want to.
Yeah, it's a good idea, but I don't know whether we can deliver it,
But, I mean, I think that's something that is a little missing piece in here. I know we fill a pothole every once in a while or something with them, but I think they could do more.
Could somebody hand Mr. Allen a microphone, please?
They backed out, and so now we got to go in. Once the guy gets finished out at the golf course doing them pines, we take him right over there to Waterville so he can give us a quote on trying to do them.
I got you. Well, they shouldn't back out. And if they backed out, we ought to call, we ought to have a conversation. Right, Mayor? It's not an argument, it's a conversation that we need to have with them. I just want to make sure it's enough, because police and fire are certainly priority, but public works is a big priority too. And I mean, it's not getting more difficult to maintain everything that we're having to maintain, especially with population increasing, with us now making commitments to Wool Market and all our wards. It's not getting any easier. And I just want to make sure that right number is in here. If we need to look at increasing some things, then we need to do that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gines. Questions?
Yes, I had a couple of things. I think somebody touched on the pay. And basically what we were talking about in the pay was Billy Ray was losing a lot of men. And I think a year ago, if not a year ago, 2 years ago, I asked about seeing if we can start with the new minimum, bringing their salaries up, a new starting salary. And I was asking to see what would it take and how much money would that be to start them at maybe $15 an hour. I think we're talking a little, or maybe a little lower. But the problem we got now is, and I know we're talking about the incentives. Incentives is great, days off are great, all that kind of stuff. But when you're barely paying your bills, most of these guys are gonna flee and they're gonna run off. So we may need to start looking at that at this point to maybe bringing up that minimum starting rate, just so we can retain some of these people that we need or that we have already, especially the good ones. Nathan Barrett brought up something about the workers. You having maybe 17, 18 workers. Well, over the past 6 or 7 years, I don't think we've had really any workers. I had to request to have them come down, and of course, there's no fault of the city because we had Oscar Render who was supposed to take care of that area. But at the end of the day, I would have to always request to have people come down and do a cleanup because they simply wasn't doing the job. So now now fast forward, Oscarinda's gone. And I still have to be in the mode where I have to have people to come on down division, come on down division, come on down division, come on down division, come on down division. And at a point where I'm almost begging to bring crews to come down instead of having a normal rotation. So it goes back to saying that we're very short on workers. So maybe we may need to look at the possibility of bringing a contractor in just to get it all good and cleaned up where our people can have a chance to get a good rotation going, and we can get people hired in so it can run a whole lot smoother. But right now, we do have issues in that area. I have streets now that have not been touched since Oscarinda's pulled out. And so, basically, they just don't come down. And we're gonna have to have workers to get in that rotation. So we have to have an answer for that at some point in time. I think you mentioned we're having a truck, we're buying a sweeper. How many sweepers do we currently have?
We have none.
We have none.
Contract sweeping.
Okay. Do we have a schedule on them?
The schedule is usually in the B, Cecilia, it's in,
It is on the website, okay.
updates it.
Yeah, because, of course, a lot of times when I'm riding, and I ride a community all the time, and I haven't seen one in a while, so I don't know if we.
They only sleep at night. They only sweep at night, One reason you don't see them is they only sweep at night.
Okay.
So you didn't see our guys on Division Street?
Didn't see a lick. So it behooves us to, maybe consider getting one so we can increase the sweeping, because there are streets that have a lot of sand that's still on it and things like that.
Yeah, what we do with that, Felix, is that we rotate the roads from one end of town to the other, and then to the north also. We got them on a monthly contract. We give them a list, and every so often we change that list up for new streets for them to actually sweep. But they always sweeping at night.
Always sweeping at night, yeah. Yeah, I hadn't, looking at the streets, I hadn't really felt like they've gotten our streets.
Well, just the other night, they was out on Pass Road sweeping, out on the west end of Pass Road. But I can get them to change it more often.
Yeah, now we only have one person sweeping
Yeah,
at night and one person taking care of the whole city.
yeah.
Okay.
Councilman, let me add too, I think we all recognize we got a challenge, okay? And, if it takes a couple of hundred more thousand to this between now and then to get, more frequency on that, or contract to handle the ditches, we could come back with this, before, the next phase. We'll get some detail on what it's going to take to double what we're doing. Those things, if you want to put 20 instead of 10, it's all part of the deal. We've got a challenge to meet, this year, as far as keeping this place where it needs to be. We were hit by Zeta, we were hit by COVID, we were hit by this, but now, it seems to have some ability financially to attack it. But, it's not gonna take a weak heart if it costs us another $1 million to use in fund balance, but the job needs to be done. And, we're in a position to do that. I just don't wanna make a mistake and hire too many versus double some contractual stuff, because our commitment to personnel are going to be over 5 years. I think that would be a reasonable way to keep good people and to keep them to perform. It's a challenge for us to get to identify what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and how do we justify the use of those dollars.
Right, and that's what I'm asking for, more of a plan of action. A schedule or a plan of action.
Yep.
Because, like I said, that rotation that we had.
Not sufficient.
Well, once Oscarinda pulled out,
Yep.
and the challenges we faced with that over the last 7, 8 years.
Well, yeah,
Now that they're gone,
right. Well,
our baby now, it's in our lap.
For TV land, you know, as I drive Oscar Renda's work, and Billy Ray was the first one to indicate, you know, we had a number of design agents, and all they had to do, you know, you've seen grass growing through the cracks of a new street, a new curb, right? And Billy Ray, what was it? Construction sealant, it should have been in there? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, and I know we missed a lot, but it's in our lap now.
No, it is, but I mean, from the design, we should have put stuff in there to keep it from doing that. It wasn't done, you know, but now we see that. But now we got to handle it.
Yeah,
we got to do the same thing on Highway 90 and the bridge. And so, I mean, that's the whole idea, is to figure out what we know what we got to do. We got to keep it clean, and it's going to take dollars and people.
Right. So again, you know, a plan of action is what I'm more or less looking at, especially to get that rotation going, or at least get it cleaned up initially. And even if it takes putting a few contractors in the budget just to get the first year out the way, where we can move.
Yeah, we do have a contractor that cuts a lot of the city lots, and it's called Guff Breeze. And sometimes we have to go behind them, but we usually make a call to them, and then the next couple of days they'll cut it. We just got through cutting Division and the on-ramps going up I-110, and they're supposed to cut everything in between the fences, which is the highway's property. They didn't cut it. We got complaints, sent them over there, cut it, clean it.
And then you went to Bayview. No,
Then why are we paying them $200,000?
well,
Yeah.
I mean, I try to call them, and half the time they don't answer their phone.
well, again,
Well, we don't need this.
Let's start.
it's a challenge. We all recognize it's a challenge, and we've addressed that with putting the horsepower and putting the dollars behind that,
Yeah.
especially in public works.
But we gotta get that rolling, and that has to be done sooner more so than later. Okay, that concludes my.
Mr. Barrett, you had another comment?
One more thing I forgot to mention is we all know that we're lacking in keeping the city clean all over, and for a multitude of reasons. One of them is the abundance of rain that we've had this summer. An issue that I understand there are some things that are beyond our control, but when we have code officers going out and writing citations for things that are pale in comparison to what some of this city property looks like, I think until we get the city cleaned up, we should stop writing these citations to our citizens. I mean, it's a double standard for us to say, hey, you do this, but we're not going to.
There's a tremendous amount of logic to that, you know, and I think, you know, again, the commitment to get this place clean, and then hopefully we do our job, people will do their job, and we won't have the need to do those things. I can't argue that fact, you know, it can't be argued, so.
That's all.
Okay. Mr. Allen, how many spots do you have vacant in your department today?
How many vacancies?
I think it's about eight or nine. That's just in one division of Public Works, 632.
Right, and any vacancies in water and sewer?
I have almost 7 in water and sewer.
So you're down 15 guys right now, or ladies, whatever. Well, okay. And the police department's down, the fire department's down, everybody's down, okay. Mike, the thought on the drainage ditch between the Enclave and Audubon Place, I know you and I had talked at one point maybe of contracting that out to have that cleaned periodically. I don't know if you plan to pursue that or not, but I mean, it would take something that's a headache, I know, off to Mr. Allen's plate. I will say Mr. Allen will do whatever he's got to do. He's great about that. But he's only got so many people. He only has so many dry days to work recently, it's hard to catch up. But just, that's a thought. Astray Electron, it might want to look at that. Mr. Mayor, I heard you say we can get through this budget and then look at, you said everything except compensation schedule, but that's what you're talking about, basically.
The job steps.
Looking at something, reevaluating what we currently have now, and working on that between October and January, and perhaps implementing something the first of the year.
Right.
Right?
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct.
That's a good thought, because I'm sensitive to what Mr. Guine said. I remember Mr. Allen basically stating, must have been several months ago, he can't keep people with what we pay him to start with. And just in looking, there's a Mississippi Municipal League puts out a salary survey every other year. I think the latest one that they have is 2019. And as a member, we have access to that. I don't think the 2021 salary survey is out yet, but it's voluntary on the parts of cities. Some cities participate, some don't, but it'll give you paint a picture of how competitive we are anyway. Okay, you want a break for the day? We've got 20.
Hey, Billy Ray, I want to ask you one question. The 15 people that you said you have open spots for, are they leaving because of low salaries? Or you just hadn't filled them?
Most of them left when the pandemic hit because they realized they could make more money by staying home with the COVID than they can coming to work.
I mean, most of the jobs you had that's open, were they the low salary jobs to start with?
Yes, sir. In fact, yesterday when I left here, ran into a guy downstairs. He was looking for me to give him an application, which he worked in Gulfport, and he just wanted to change and come to work for Biloxi. And he was making $12.50 an hour as a heavy equipment operator over there. Driving a dump truck, got his CDLs, got his hazmat license and everything. Took the application, took it back to the office. I asked Jerry Lynn to go ahead and run a background check on him so I could try to get him in and hired at Biloxi.
So we pay, so we pay somebody like that?
I think they plugged some new numbers into the budget at $12.50 rather than $11.75. So that was that bottom line. That's what you got people if you was lucky to get them for $11.75 an hour.
Just trying to figure it out, you know, they're paying $12.50 and leaving over there, so we got to be paying more than $12.50. Again?
We have to pay at least $12.50. We have to match them.
Yeah.
Better benefit system.
Well, we're at 1092 now, I think, for the base hourly rate. And if you're talking about 1250, that means there's going to be a ripple through the compensation schedule, so. But anyway, any other questions about Public Works? I do want to recognize the gentleman who's wide awake in the back, working real hard on his phone right now, is State Representative Kevin Felsher. Thanks for sitting in today, Mr. Felsher. You want to go to another department, Mayor, or you want to just call it a
Bring us right
day?
up to 6 o'clock when we're supposed to have it. So we let's take a break and come back at 6 and whatever you want to do.
Well, we got our council meeting at 6. Mr. Lawrence has done the dealers thing, whatever they do. So we're done for the day.
On this,
We
on this
pretty much
subject.
covered police, fire, and public works today. Right?
Let me say this before we adjourn on
Yes,
this.
sir.
Let me do some analysis on what we can get done contractually. In the next workshop, we'll come back and update this. Maybe, it's just a figure. If it's $400,000 more, we'll add $400,000 more to get the stuff done that we're talking about. Felix talked about the sweeper, talking about ditch, cleaning. If we can identify, there's some folks, I think, turf masters or something for ball fields, a number of things. Let me do a little research more, since there seems to be some appetite to buy it versus grow it, right? So we'll get that for you next go around, next we meet on this subject.
Okay. Before we adjourn, we've got our next budget meeting next Tuesday at following our. No, we don't. We're off. No, we do have a budget
I know, but we
meeting.
don't have a
next week.
regular meeting.
We have a budget meeting only, no council meeting next week. A budget meeting, that's at 1:30, I believe.
Yeah.
To cover more departments. All right, that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrett. Thank you. All in favor? Okay. 6-0 vote.
So I'm gonna do this part, or does somebody need to